A few months ago in Tesco, I found what I believe is the UK's cheapest pork shoulder at £2.50 per kilogram. I bought one to cook immediately on the barbecue and one for the freezer. With the one I put on the barbecue, I made a little YouTube video with it. And it did surprisingly well. At time of recording, it has had 120,000 views. Now this is of course fantastic for my little YouTube channel, but in this video I actually ran a test on it and it didn't really work. The pork turned out a little bit too dry. I was able to save it with a bit of barbecue sauce, but essentially my best ever performing video is a video of me messing up a pork shoulder. So it's time to remedy that. So in this video I'll show you how you actually get perfect pulled pork every time. Our story begins at 12:30 PM on a very warm Saturday. I have defrosted my second pork joint from the freezer. This bad boy weighs just under 2 kilograms, so cost me just under a £5. I am going to be cooking this one low and slow today at 120 degrees Celsius, so I would normally start a little bit earlier in the day for this, but we're having a bit of a late one tonight, so I'm not too fussed about that. Once you have patted your pork dry, it's time to remove these strings so we can get to that rind. Now, one of the pieces of feedback I got from my last video was my horrific knife skills. I love a bit of constructive criticism, and one commenter in particular had a great tip. They suggested I go skin side down and then slice off like this. And I'm incredibly grateful because it's worked amazingly well and it's made one of the hardest bits nice and simple. You always want to get this big bit of rind off, and this method makes it nice and simple. Now what I like to do is take this rind, put it in a separate tray, smoke it alongside, render out all that fat and use it on top of the pork at the end. But yeah, stick around, see what happens with that. Next I just trim off any little bits of skin I may have missed and then put the strings back on. Then pop on some yellow American mustard as a binder. If you don't like mustard, don't worry, you're not going to taste it in the final product. And it's at this point where I remember I really should show you the marbling in this piece of meat, because it's fantastic. This is the sort of marbling you're looking for in a good pork joint if you're going to use it for pulled pork. And then we rub. Having massaged your pork like you've just bought it at dinner, it's now time to give it some seasoning. In this case I'm going to use my own homemade BBQ rub. I'll put the recipe in the description so you can make your own, or you can just use any barbecue rub you like, or indeed any sort of spices or flavourings. As always, we're cooking to temperature, not time, so to monitor the internal temperature, I'm going to use my Ninja wireless thermometer, and we are ready for the barbecue. I'm going to be cooking this today on my Traeger pellet smoker, but you could use any lidded barbecue. Just make sure it's set up to indirect cooking at 120 degrees Celsius, or a different, totally unrelated number in Fahrenheit. Just Google it. Now I've got my Ninja probe in there, which is Bluetooth, but I'm going to shove in my Traeger probe as well because that's on the Wi-Fi in case I leave the house. Then go away and find yourself some fun activity to do for the next 5 hours or so. I don't know, wash the cat or something. And come back to your pork when your thermometer is telling you that it's 75 degrees internal. This means it has hit what we call the stall. So now it's time to wrap it up. Now this is going to help it push through that stall without drying out. This is the stage I actually skipped last time as a test. We all saw how that turned out. Now I can highly recommend this food service foil from Costco. It's amazing. And don't forget your pork rind to render down. That would be a disaster. And you have another couple of hours to kill, so maybe speak to your partner and list all the little things about them that annoy you. Once my app is telling me that we're at 95 degrees internal, I want a second opinion from my handheld thermometer. This also gives you a chance to check how tender it is with the probe, and even drop your probe in like this. No real reason for doing that, it's just a bit of fun. If the temperature's at 95 and the probe is going through like butter, then you're ready to pull this thing off. It is of course very hot, so we're just going to swaddle it up in a tea towel like a little pork baby. This both stops us burning our hands, but it's also going to sit in that tea towel while it rests to keep it nice and insulated. It is very tempting at this point to just get straight into this thing and start eating, but do not skip the resting step, it's super important. And remember the pork I left in there to render? Well, this is the last you're ever going to see of it, because I forgot to take it out. Found it in there the next morning. Back inside the house, and my dog has volunteered to help me out, so together we're going to put this in the cool box to rest. If you don't have a cool box, just put it in your oven or microwave, as these are already insulated. I sealed that up and I'm very happy with myself, but my co-worker is furious. Now this will need to rest for at least 1 hour, at the very least, and it's only going to get better if you do it for 2 or 3. If you can, you're always better off planning to rest your meat for about 3-4 hours, and that way if you're running a bit late, you're not going to be late serving your food because you just cut down the resting time a bit. And now I want to pull this pork without burning my hands, so I'm going to use these cotton glove liners I got from ProSmoke in Banbury under these latex gloves, and I got these off Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. Together this is going to allow me to pull the pork with my hands. If you don't have these, you can just use a couple of forks, something like that. And it's time to see how we've done. This thing is smelling absolutely incredible. I'll start by taking off these pieces of string that were left on, because you don't want a mouthful of string when you're trying to enjoy your pulled pork. And with those out of the way, like a recently divorced mum of 3 on a night out in Blackpool, we're ready to pull. Unlike her, however, you will find this incredibly satisfying. I set out with this pork shoulder to redeem myself and just wanted to show the easiest way to make incredible pulled pork with very cheap supermarket meat. And actually what I've done here is honestly created the best pulled pork I've ever had in my entire life. I honestly can't describe to you how perfect this was. It just absolutely fell apart. The fat content was incredible, and the flavours from the smoke and the rub just worked so well with the pork. Fat content in pork shoulder, that marbling that you can see in between the muscles, is so important to getting decent pulled pork. It's this fat that stops it getting dry and gives you that soft, incredibly tender mouthfeel. You can see here there's been a decent amount of smoke penetration into it, and the outer layer that's been exposed to the smoke has formed an incredible bark. All of these elements mixed together to make what is the most incredible pulled pork ever, all made from the UK's cheapest pork shoulder. Just make sure, as the chef, you find yourself a nice juicy bit and help yourself to a little bit before you serve it for everyone else. And as for serving, pulled pork is incredibly versatile. You can have it on anything you like: rolls, pizzas, pop it in chilies, nachos. That sounds good, might try that next. But in this case, I'm going to go for some flatbreads. You can buy these flatbreads from Tesco too. They're about £1.25, something like that. Put a little bit of water over them, shove them on an oven tray in the oven for about 2 minutes at 200, and then you've got 2 quite hot, ready to go flatbreads. On a plate, I'm going to load mine up with that delicious pulled pork, literally as much as I fancy, which is quite a lot. I'm going to overstuff this thing. Got a little bit of tzatziki left over from a meal that I had the other day. And then I've knocked up this little sweet corn salad, so throw that on. Give the whole meal a slightly Mexican vibe. And then, not worrying for one moment that I've overstuffed this thing, because I always do, it's time to pick up this delicious mess. Now, I was rooting around in the fridge for something to go with this and knocked up some lovely Jersey Royal new potatoes. Not the most conventional meal in the world, but it's my dinner, I'll do what I like. It looks absolutely delicious. I'm very proud of this thing, but Mrs. Barbecue, of course, has to come and completely upstage me. Look at that, pure filth.